Jesus wasn't born some newborn king, but in fact he was born into slavery. Well, part of the reason people have never heard about this is because of the way the Bible has been translated. For example, in Philippians 2, there is this text called the Christ hymn. Often the mention of slave and being born are obscured in English translations. For example, in the Old King James, it has servant instead of slave and maid instead of born. That being said, people often overlook that Philippians 2 presents Jesus explicitly as someone who was born into slavery. Okay, hold up. So maybe Paul and some early Jesus followers thought that Jesus was born into slavery, but why isn't this in any of the Gospels? Yeah, that's a good question. Let's look at the Gospels a little bit. In Luke 2:21, it explains that Jesus was circumcised on the 8th day. Often people associate this description with Jesus being a good Torah-observant Jew, and that is indeed correct. But this may also indicate that he was born into slavery in a Jewish household. You see, in Genesis 17:12-13, it explains that every male born in one's household should be circumcised on the 8th day, including slaves. And so Luke describing Jesus' circumcision may actually indicate that he was born into slavery in a Jewish household. Lastly, and most convincingly, Luke's gospel is the only gospel to mention that Jesus begins his public ministry at 30 years old. To anybody who knows about the ubiquity of slavery in the Roman world, this is obviously a mention that Jesus was a newly freed man. You see, in 4 CE, Caesar Augustus passed a law that specifically explains a person must be 30 years old for their freedom or their manumission to be legitimate. And so Luke's unique and passing mention that Jesus is a 30-year-old person is an indication to anyone who knows about Roman slavery that he's actually a newly freed person. You see, Jesus being born into slavery is actually written right there in Luke's gospel, but we miss it because we don't read Luke's gospel closely.